Hello, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting, our first regular council meeting for the month of September. And welcome to your virtual town hall. And thank you to staff and council and those who are watching on our live stream tonight. So we will open the meeting and provide you with a bit of a prelude, which is that we are audio and video recording and live streaming this meeting this evening, and it shall form part of the public record, which will be retained according to the town's retention bylaw. And for information about that bylaw, you can contact our clerk's office. So I would also remind members of council, as I always forget, is to silent or mute your phone for the evening, and we will move to the opening of the meeting. So open forum, we did not have anyone unless the clerk's office had a late arrival. Did we have anyone for open forum this evening? The clerk's office.
None, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Creamer. So no open forum. So we'll move to the approval of the agenda. So we did have, unfortunately, regrets from MPP Kanjan. She wasn't unable to attend this evening. So a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended. That would be Councillor Fowler and Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That is carried. Next is disclosures of interest. If anyone has a disclosure of conflict or perceived conflict of interest, if they would disclose it at this time, or if not, if something becomes apparent to you during the meeting, please just bring it forward for our attention at that time. And next we have our presentation from Andy Kanjan, which is not happening this evening. So then we have Mike Walters, the CAO of the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, who's here tonight to present the 2020 Budget Companion and Annual Operating Priorities. Mr. Walters.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, members of council. I'm just going to share my screen, hopefully. Oh, I need to have that enabled.
Is it okay?
It's saying it's disabled at the present time. So if you want to pull up the presentation that you have, that would be fine. Thank you so much. So it's my great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and anybody watching in the audience. As has been mentioned, the purpose of today's presentation really is just to draw council's attention to the budget companion document. And normally I'd be out earlier in the year with our annual operating priorities, but due to COVID, instead of telling you what those are, it'll be more of an update of where we're at. So hopefully you can bear with me. So next slide, please. So the budget companion is something, it's only 2 years old. We started the new process last year. We're producing it annually from now on because it provides much more detail than just the budget document itself, which is more of just a numbers, here's what the revenue and the expenditures are. The companion is essentially going to be replacing our annual report over time, in that it will be having the year's expectations for outcomes as well as achievements from the previous year. Next slide, please. So we're hoping that the companion document is easy to read. It's very easy to navigate. All of our service areas are listed, and then the programs within each service area are also listed. And it is extremely transparent, as you'll see. I'll go through an example. Next slide, please. The first page in the companion document is just the general overview of the budget. And again, it just summarizes all of the service areas. It shows the operating and capital. It shows where our revenue is coming from, what expenditure types we're spending it on. And it is linked into our strategic plan. So our vision and our mission are mentioned as well. And you can see the 7 service areas. Next up is just an example of one of those service areas, water risk management. We just drill down. So you can see based on the water risk management program, there's approximately 10 full-time equivalent employees working on this. Again, the budget is there, the revenue source is the expenditure type, what is operating and what is capital. Within the actual program area, there are individual program service areas as well: flood management, source water protection, water management, restoration, water science and monitoring. And again, the budgets are there. And I'm extremely proud to say that the bulk of this is actually designated towards restoration. So working towards projects that will either provide flood relief or improve water quality. And those projects are completed throughout the watershed. Next slide, please. And just going down to one of those actual small program areas, flood management and warning. We talk a bit about what our focus is for 2020, how the outlook is with respect to any stressors or changes, the service pressures that we might encounter. And then we do talk a bit about the 2019 achievements. And that's why we're suggesting that this document will be able to replace in large part the annual report. We are moving towards a real-time reporting function with all key performance indicators on our website, and that would be updated live as things occur. So throughout the year, you could get an update on how many trees are being planted, how many kilometers of shoreline are being fixed or stream bank. Those activities will be highlighted within the web page, and then they'll be summarized again within this document at the end of every year. So next slide, please. So I mentioned that this document, because there was a need for it, we thought, especially with the province, they wanted to see what we were spending the money on. We wanted to make sure that the public had a great idea of what the revenue that we were getting from our municipal partners and others was going towards. So it is linked to our strategic plan, as I mentioned, and these are the annual operating priorities. And we go through this exercise every year where we actually select the priorities that we're going to undertake within any given year. And those are presented usually to council earlier on in the spring. Sometimes there are AOP items which are not based on the strategic plan, but they occur because of an external opportunity or a pressure. So for example, if the federal government comes forward with a truckload of money to undertake projects through some new cleanup fund, we would be making that a priority to ensure that we were implementing as much as we could throughout the year. And many of these annual operating priorities can span years. And I'll give you some examples as we go through the list. So next slide, please. So in total, there's 13 annual operating priorities for 2020. The first is the floodplain emergency mapping flood relief program. We've actually been able to update a lot of the mapping throughout the watershed. We received some new product called LiDAR, which has enabled us to do quite a bit more mapping. And unfortunately, right now, it's only available in York and Durham, but we are going to be acquiring Simcoe County in the very near future. And what it does is it provides us with better relief, which means not only do we have the X, Y, but we also have the Z, so the elevation, and it's remarkable accuracy. It's up to a centimeter. And so as a result, we've been able to actually identify opportunities to relieve flooding within many communities based on areas that we've identified as choke points or problems with conveyance. And it's an example would be the Elkona wetland creation that we're hoping to undertake in the very near future with the town. So climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies, I'm pleased to say they're both completed. The reports are completed on the website. We are working on operational plans, and we will be contacting our member municipalities in the very near future, your staff, to look at how we can best align some of our business practices to achieve some of the outcomes that we've identified within those strategies. So stay tuned on that. Asset management is something we have been working on. It has been impacted by COVID, unfortunately. It will not be a deliverable this year, but it will be a deliverable probably in Q2 of next year. So essentially it is looking at the life cycle of all of our assets, ensuring that we're going to have a plan in place so that as those assets start to degrade, decline, depreciate, we'll be able to replace them over time. This will take a lot of uncertainty out with respect to our budget asks, and hopefully it'll just make the budget process that much easier for all of us. So we continue to enhance service delivery, plan review, and regulation. One of the unintended consequences of COVID is it has got us all working electronically from home. And as a result, we've essentially, all the plan review, all of the permitting is now available to do electronic file transfer. So we can do all of that work from home. And we're actually very pleased with the progress that's been made. And even when things get back to normal, we're going to provide this service to folks. What it means is people don't have to drive all the way into the office to submit a permit application. They can do it from their home, and we can service everything. If there's a site visit that has to be scheduled, it can be done. So Scanlon Creek Operations Center, I'm very pleased to say that it is 99.9% complete. And I want to thank Council for your past contributions very much. This is a very important project. Moving forward, it's going to help us get back into the offices quicker. Given the problems we had in our current space, we would never have been able to social distance in our old office with the number of staff we have. It's still going to be a bit of a challenge, but we're working through the details now. And as a result of this operations center, we're just waiting for the occupancy permit right now from the town of Bradford. Once we get that, we'll be looking at moving all of the desks, the furniture back in, and it'll be a little while yet before we're back, but it certainly is going to alleviate a lot of the pressure that we had with crowding in our old office. So again, thanks to Council for your contribution in completing that project. We continue to fundraise for the Education Center. We're doing our Roughing It for a Reason in a couple of weeks. So don't be surprised if you get an email requesting some funding from some staff. Right now, we're at about $1.4 to $1.5 million. And very, very pleased with the effort that our folks have put in. And we're looking to get this constructed sometime in 2022. And we're very, very, well, we're hopeful that we'll be able to get the funding to put it into the ground, because the current nature center, unfortunately, is past its life cycle. And that's a fancy term for falling apart slowly. So if we're going to have continuity in the program, we're going to need to make sure that the new nature center gets built. So, and I know there's been a lot of help from folks at the town as well. So thank you. Next slide. Community engagement strategy. Unfortunately, this has also been delayed. It's hard to do engagement when you're on a screen. Our communication staff are doing a great job regardless. They've been able to overcome a lot of the difficulty. They're doing a lot of surveys and calls, and we are hoping to see this completed in Q1 of next year. It will help inform the last item, which is the draft strategic plan. But right now it's behind by about 3 months, unfortunately, due to COVID and the difficulties in trying to engage, especially with the community under these conditions. So we are continuing to lead the salt reduction strategies. The discussion paper on salt has been sent to the province, and we're actually meeting with the province. The strategy is twofold. One is to create regulations on how to best apply salt. And the next is to create legislation that would protect people against litigation should there be a trip, slip, and fall. Most of the salt we're seeing applied within the commercial industrial sector is because the retailers and the industries are worried about essentially litigation associated with trip, slips, and falls. So if we can create legislation that if people are following the appropriate practices for salt application, then these litigations will be denied. Then we think that salt will be drastically reduced. There are some commercial enterprises within the watershed that put as much salt on their parking lot as some of our municipal partners put on all their roads. So that gives you an indication of how significant a problem it actually is. Our land disposition policy is completed. The strategy will be presented at October's board meeting. We do have a lot of lands that don't meet our current land acquisition goals or objectives. And as a result, we're going to be looking at disposing of some of those lands. And many of them might go to our municipal partners who are already managing them for us and have been managing them for us under agreement since 1995. So really, it's a bit of an obvious strategy. If our municipal partners have been running these properties, providing them the properties for $1 makes perfect sense, and it reduces essentially liability and some of the budget problems that we have. We can focus more on the properties that we want to develop throughout our watershed. So number 10 is to continue our restoration efforts. More than a quarter of our budget is actually designated towards doing projects. You saw what was in the water risk management. There's also the ecological side of the business, which is creating wetlands, grasslands, doing all sorts of stream bank and fisheries work, working with the agricultural community as well. So more than $5 million of our $21 million budget is towards restoration efforts. And this is great. It's in large part due to the great efforts of the build industry working with us on the offsetting programs. And that money goes right back into doing these projects and improving water quality, reducing flooding, and overall restoring the natural heritage system throughout the watershed. So we have to give credit to the build industry for their cooperation, and again, our municipal partners as well. So it's unfortunate that we missed MPP Kangen. We are working with the province to implement the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. Our efforts continue. We're still doing all of the science and monitoring on behalf of the province. We're doing a lot of the restoration, as I just touched on, and we need to do a bit more of the education as well. So looking forward to continue that relationship with the province of Ontario and try to achieve some of the goals in the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, again, in partnership with our municipal partners. And finally, the draft 2021-2026 strategic plan. Actually, it will only be a 3-year plan thanks to COVID. This has been another casualty. We think the uncertainty associated with COVID-19 is going to last for a little while, especially it's impacting all of our partners. So therefore, instead of doing a 5-year plan, we're looking at doing a 3-year plan. So it will not be completed until second quarter of next year, but we'll have all of the information that we need to inform the development of the plan completed by year end. So next slide, please. So our path ahead still remains very clear. Our overall mission and objectives has not changed. We're looking at improving water quality and quantity. We want to increase our natural heritage system by planting trees, by creating wetlands, creating grasslands. And in addition, we see the benefits to climate change by doing that, by reducing carbon footprint and doing sequestration across the watershed. We're looking at making our communities safer, healthier, and more connected by essentially undertaking a lot of the restoration work as well. And I didn't get into a lot on the land acquisition side, but the intent to still have a western lake-to-lake trail is very much alive. We're about halfway there, but we have a few challenges to overcome. So, but we'll continue to work at it, and hopefully we can see a trail system come up through the town of Innisfil all the way to Lake Simcoe at some point. So we are achieving a lot of success through our partnerships, and whether COVID is good or bad, it certainly did drive some innovation, but has impacted, as I said, our engagement. And finally, we're going to be monitoring and reporting our progress to our partners and the community as we go. And with the new website and the key performance indicators, that'll be occurring throughout the year, not just annually at the annual general meeting. So next slide, please. So before I relinquish the floor, I just wanted to recognize Councillor Waters for his excellent service on our board. He is the the member who sits on our board of directors, and he is doing a great job. And we couldn't be pleased more that you sent him to help us out. So thank you very much. And I'd be more than happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walters, for that. I like the companion document. It reminds me a little bit of our service-based budgets. I like the way it's compartmentalized, and I will open the floor for questions for Mr. Walters. I don't see any. So I will also just reiterate thank you so much to Councillor Waters. We all know sitting at this council how much conservation it means to him. And so he was an easy fit to the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Board. I will also tell council I sent you an email tonight. It was a link to the fundraising for Friesen for a Reason for Mr. Walters and his quest. I hate to admit I was somewhat responsible for you having just to sleep out without an air mattress last year, as I did contribute to that. He was fully outfitted, and then the more money he got donated, the less things that he had around him. So it was a little bit mean, but encourage everybody to get involved, because Scanlon Creek, although it's not in Innisfil, is really close to Innisfil and will be a great asset for years to come for our municipality. And my final comment, Mr. Walters, is that I was very surprised and shocked this week to read that you've announced your retirement. And I have so enjoyed working with you. I was on the board of the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority in 2006. And then in 2007, accepted a position with the Source Water Protection Committee. So we've been arm in arm working through that since then. And I've enjoyed so much your leadership through the Conservation Authority. You've guided the ship well with grace under pressure, and also just extreme innovation in conservation. And on behalf of all of us at the town, I want to thank you very much for your service and wish you a very long and healthy and happy retirement.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Have a great team at the authority, and they'll continue the business continuity into the future. So
great. So with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to receive the annual operating priorities. And I'm going to choose Councillor Waters to move that. I think it's only appropriate, and Deputy Mayor Davidson to second. All those in favor? That is carried. Thanks again, Mr. Walters, and I hope we get to see you again before the end of your term.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next presentation, which is the Innisfil Idea Lab and Library Board. And I believe we have the chair with us this evening. Monica Goodfellow, welcome.
Yes, you do.
And Mandy, welcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen now.
All right. So good evening, Mayor and Council. We are so excited to be here tonight to answer the question why we eliminated overdue fines of the Innisfil Public Library. Why our library matters. We bring people together, we make their lives better. Our libraries function as social infrastructure for Innisfil. They are an informal gathering place, a public space that places no demands on our residents. People meet their neighbors and they make new friends at the library. These relationships play an important role in mental health and general well-being. Our residents can access resources and programs that support lifelong learning, personal growth, job searching, and skills improvement. Participation in library programs and access to our collections helps to close the $30 million word deficit that children living below the poverty line are likely to have. Community-led decisions. The Innisfil Idea Lab and Library belongs to our residents. No one person owns one book. Everything belongs to everyone. We have a sharing model. The board uses formal tools like surveys and discussion groups to give us input from the community to make big decisions. We rely on our staff who talk to hundreds of residents every week to help us make better decisions for our library and for our community. One policy that was not making anyone's life better was our overdue fines policy.
Overdue fines are a longstanding policy at many libraries for decades. And in the case of Innisfil, it's a policy we've had in place since the Stroud Library opened in 1912. And it's a policy that's based on some assumptions. One of the main assumptions is that the threat of a financial consequence will translate to action on behalf of the member or the resident, and it will actually cause them to return materials on time. And it's also based on the assumption that everyone has the equal ability to do so, that they have equal income, transportation, time, physical, and mental resources. And we know that while it seems like a logical model, it seems on the face of it like this is something that would be straightforward. Human behavior is influenced by many different factors, and that not everybody has the same resources. We know we have income inequality in Innisfil, as every municipality does. And so overdue fines disproportionately impact people with a low income, and those are often the people who need our services the most. The result is that they're excluded from participation in their library and ultimately their community. They're excluded from resources and tools that can help them look for a job, improve their digital literacy skills, access information that enables personal growth, access reading material and programs that help children develop crucial literacy skills. And it also excludes them from having the same ability to make new friends and be engaged in their community socially and civically. Increasingly, overdue fines at public libraries are being recognized around the world as both a social justice issue and a human rights issue. I'm going to tell you a quick story about one resident here in Innisfil. And unfortunately, it is not the only story I could tell you, but I think it really highlights the importance of this issue. So we had a single father who came to one of our branches on a regular basis. We saw him at least once a week. He would bring his 2 children in to borrow books and just spend some family time together. They didn't have their own transportation. They relied on public transportation. And this was a place that was within walking distance for them that they could go together as a family and enjoy, and it didn't cost them anything. So we actually stopped seeing him and his children come in. It had been a few months, and one of our staff ran into him at the grocery store, and she said hello and asked him how he was doing and wondered why we weren't seeing him anymore. And he told her that he actually had some medical bills that put him in a financial situation such that he could no longer afford the overdue fines that were on his account at the library. And he made a really logical decision as a parent and as somebody under that kind of strain, which was to stop using a service that he felt he couldn't afford. And the result was that he was not borrowing materials and his children were no longer borrowing books from the library. On July 1st, the Innisfil Idea Lab and Library eliminated overdue fines on books, audiobooks, magazines, and media. People are still responsible for the materials that they borrow, and we ask that they do their best to return them on time. We encourage everyone to be considerate of their friends and neighbors who are waiting for those materials so that they can borrow them as well and get the same enjoyment and benefit. If materials do become overdue, once they're 3 weeks overdue, a replacement fee is added to the account, and at that point, they would no longer be able to borrow materials. But those fees are completely removed if the items are returned before they're 6 weeks overdue. And so they would have to pay nothing at that point. And even if the materials become more than 6 weeks overdue, we will work with people to do whatever we need to get them using the library again. So we understand that when life gets in the way, you have other things going on, and sometimes making it to the library isn't at the top of the list. We want everyone to know that you're still welcome. So what happens when libraries eliminate overdue fines is some fantastic things. And a lot of libraries around the world have been making this change in recent years, and particularly in Europe, Australia, and throughout the United States. And Canada has just started adopting this model at some libraries this year across the country. Innisfil is the second library in the province to do so. And what happens is that materials are actually returned at the same rate. So you don't have additional materials becoming overdue. The same number of materials that went overdue before the policy change stays in place. The same rates happen. And often the number of materials that become lost decrease. So we get more items back. And that's because people aren't afraid to come in. They don't feel like they're going to get in trouble because they've broken the rules. And more materials are circulating. So people come back to the library. And in some cases, they've actually avoided libraries for years. I know of one person who avoided for the library for more than 20 years because of overdue fines. And they now come back and they start borrowing things again. And they visit the library more often. And because they're visiting, they access more services. So what this change means for Innisfil residents is that to everybody who stopped coming to the library because they were embarrassed because they couldn't afford the overdue fines or just didn't want to deal with it, it's time to come back and use your library again. There's no more overdue fines on anyone's account. They're gone. And at this time, we're removing replacement charges for any previously long overdue materials. So for the chapter book that slipped under the bed or the cookbook that got missed and you feel a little bit guilty about every time you walk by the shelf, don't worry about it, bring it back, it's okay. And if you really lost something, it's completely gone, you know there's no hope of it ever turning up, talk to us and we'll figure it out together. We're really flexible. We're your library, we're here to help. The response since implementing this change in July has been nothing but positive. We've had people tell us that they feel less anxiety about borrowing materials, especially at a time when their finances are already stressed because of how they've been personally impacted by the pandemic. One resident told us that she spent a couple of weeks in the hospital and was worried about having overdue materials. She knew they were sitting in her house and had no way of returning them. And so when she learned that she didn't have to pay anything, she was extremely relieved to not have to worry about that, especially at a time when she was under a lot of stress.
Our hopes for Innisfil, that everyone will have the same opportunities, feel welcome at their library, and be able to borrow a book. Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council, for your time and consideration of this important issue and the change that we've had at Innisfil Idea Lab and Library. And at this time, we'd both be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Chair Goodfellow and Mandy. We really appreciate you being here tonight. I sure wish you were around when my kids were in high school. I wish this policy was around then. Questions and comments for our library, Idea Lab and Library. Councillor Sadi.
Thank you. Just as a member of the library board, thank you to Monica, our chair, and Mandy. I think it was a great proactive decision, that's a recommendation that staff made to the board. It's been well received in the public, and as Mandy and Monica had said, I think it couldn't have come at a better time when people are struggling, and you know, having those books and the guilt associated with it, to be able to return them and feel free to use the library again, especially at a time when they needed it. So I think it's a very proactive and good move on the library. Very proud of it again.
Thank you, Councillor Sadi. Any other questions or comments? I have one. You mentioned we were second in Ontario, but I know many have followed suit since then. Do you have examples of other municipalities? I believe New Tecumseh is on that list, our neighbor.
Brant County Library was the first one back in January, and Barrie actually announced the day after we did that they were also going fine-free, and Vaughan as well. Those are the ones that come to mind, but I expect there's going to be more coming throughout the rest of the year.
Well, as is usual, our Innisfil Idea Lab and Library are always leaders. So thank you to you, Chair Monica, and to our board members, Councillor Fowler and Councillor Orsatti, for being on the library board. So I have a motion that the presentation regarding the fine-free policy from Innisfil, Idea Lab and Library be received, and that's moved by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Orsatti. All of those in favor? That is carried. Thanks so much for being with us tonight and providing this great information. Thank you. Next on the agenda is delegations. We have no delegations this evening. Item number 7 is County Council, Municipal Association and Conservation Authority and committee updates. Who would like to provide an update this evening? Councillor Waters.
The only thing I wanted to mention is something that you've already taken care of, Your Worship, and that was that Mike Walters was retiring. And I appreciate the nice words he said about him, because they're all true. Mike has been a true leader in the Conservation Authority movement. I was with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority for 30 years. And in those 30 years, I only ever heard good, positive things about Mike and the work he done, and he provided strong leadership to the point that I think Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority is probably probably the leader in Ontario for transparency and the good work that they do, and that's a tribute to him and his staff and his dedication to the conservation movement. He will be dearly missed, and I know on several occasions when I've had to ask him sensitive questions and pointed questions, he's always been open, transparent, and honest with me, and always made me feel much more comfortable. So he will be dearly missed there. And one thing I just wanted to say, that's hopefully he's still listening, because I did want to say those things earlier, but you did such a good job that I thought I would just mention it now. Thank you.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Councillor. I'm so sorry about that. But if he isn't still on the call, we'll make sure to send him a copy of this tape so he can hear those words coming right from one of his board of directors. Anyone else have, Deputy Mayor, did you want to talk about County Council?
Thank you, Worship. We had a long meeting yesterday at County Council discussing changing the format of County Council. Unfortunately, we weren't unable to come to a decision. There was some media out there today speaking about it that maybe just throw us all away and do something else. But I think a lot of people who do know about County Council know how much work mayors like yourself and deputy mayors and committees that you sit on, Your Worship, that you dedicate so many hours to it, and we all do as councillors. We dedicate so much time to reading, and you have to remember, what is the total population, Lynn, of Simcoe County? Is it not going to be close to 650,000 people that we represent totally?
In 2031, it's to be 667,000.
So we're planning for years ahead of this term, the next term, and trying to make the best decisions for the development of Simcoe County to be the place where you can live, work, and play. So yesterday we had a very extensive meeting, a Zoom meeting, I think for about 4.5 hours. And Mayor Dolan chairs on the governance committee. So there was a lot of back and forth on that one. So if people don't know about the county, I suggest maybe you Google it and see what the county contributes to our community and what we contribute to the county as well, and the dedication and hard work that makes it all work as one big family. So that was it for yesterday on County Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to touch bases from the School and Traffic Safety Committee, because with the back to school, there's a lot of questions from the public and comments on media about our bylaw enforcement and what is happening and what's in place from the committee. But always the best way to get information is through our customer service staff. We have great ambassadors who can quickly respond to those answers. But I want to assure the public that our bylaw, I mean, we have amazing bylaw staff, but there's only so many. But our bylaws out in full force for the beginning of the school with respect to all parking concerns and enforcement. They're mirroring South Simcoe South Simcoe Police with respect to messaging and enforcement in those areas. And they're focusing their resources for the next 2 weeks around the schools, abutting the residential areas, and specifically focusing on those problem areas that we heard from in previous years. So I really wanted to say thank you to our bylaw staff for concentrating on that. We don't publicize and maybe promote ourselves enough, but we have a great support team through both the customer service ambassadors and our bylaw, and just wanted to share that information with everyone out there.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else have any updates from committees or municipal associations? I'm going to just quickly talk about the AMO conference. So typically in the middle of August, Council would attend the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference. This year it was a little bit different. It was a virtual conference. It was quite I think a brave thing for them to do, was to put on a conference of that size and do it virtually. And I'm happy to say it was a huge success. There were about 1,800 delegates that attended, and the avatars and the scenes that were in the background made you actually feel like you were at the conference center in Ottawa at the conference. There was a live interaction both through the trade show floor. There were 3 ministers' forums. There was live updates from the Premier and many of the ministers. And also there was delegation opportunities for all of us. So on Innisfil's behalf, I attended 3 delegations, one with Minister Jones, the Solicitor General, one with Minister Mulrooney. We touched on a number of topics, including the 6th line interchange and the Cookstown bypass. And an item I won't get into, it's under item B1, which is automated speed enforcement. And then we also had the opportunity to meet with Minister Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, who had wonderful things to say about Innisfil and how he said that he used us as an example to other municipalities, which was really a nice thing to hear. This year's election, or this year's conference, also included an election of the board of directors, and I was a candidate in that election. There were 7 members running for the Small Urban Caucus for 4 seats, and I'm happy to tell you I was successful, and also really honored to be chosen by the other my peers to chair the Small Urban Caucus going forward for the next 2 years. So that is important to Innisfil, because that means that we will have a seat at the AMO MOU table that takes place monthly with ministers at Queen's Park, and gives us the opportunity to provide input directly and frankly to ministers prior to items being brought forward in the legislature, and sometimes being brought forward to cabinet. So I'm happy to serve on that board for another 2 years. And other than that, we did have an all-staff meeting, which we like to do at least once a month. And I know many of you attended that. And I was remiss in not thanking Councillor Payne and Councillor Orsatti for attending the AMO conference as well. And at the all-staff meeting, it's simply a matter of trying to keep everybody feeling connected and as one town, one team, while we all work so remotely. So that's my update. So seeing no hands, I'm going to move into the consent agenda now. So we'll go through, for those who are watching who've maybe not attended a council meeting before. We have a long list of agenda items. We won't necessarily discuss every one. We'll go through the items one by one. If council is happy with the recommendation that's printed in the agenda, we will move past it. If council wants to debate, discuss, ask questions about an item, or perhaps amend a recommendation, we'll move that into committee of the whole and discuss that further there. So we'll start with item A1, which is the special council meeting minutes dated August the 12th. Item A2, the council meeting minutes dated August the 12th. Item 3, the special council meeting minutes dated August the 19th. A4, the special council meeting minutes dated August the 26th. I just want to point out that a lot of work this summer for council when we would normally have a lesser schedule, and I want to thank everybody for being so gracious of your time. B1, the School Zone Traffic Safety Committee report dated August the 25th. Councillor Van Berkel?
I don't want to pull it, Your Worship, but I do have a request, if possible. I don't know, unless you have appointed already a representative to participate in the technical advisory committee and act as a liaison between the school zone traffic safety and the traffic safety. I would like to be appointed to that if possible, unless, like I said, you have appointed somebody already.
Thank you. No, that'll be up to the committee. I really do appreciate you volunteering for that. For members of council and for the audience, this is an exciting opportunity. We're looking at developing policies to have traffic calming measures within the town. And we have a technical group, which is mostly traffic engineers from the town. We also have our traffic safety committee, and we definitely need some back-to-back liaison between those two groups. So thank you very much, Councillor Van Berkel, for volunteering for that role. And we'll bring your request forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B2, the Audit Advisory Committee report dated August the 26th. Deputy Mayor Davids.
I would just like to say thanks to the committee for presenting the audit the report to us, and a special thank you to previous Councillor Bill Bring, who seemed to be very thorough on his analysis of the audit. And I respect the man highly because he taught me a lot way back when I was starting. So I'm glad to see for 2019 that it moved forward like it did. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next is item, oh, sorry, Councillor Waters.
I don't want to pull it, but I just wanted to ask one question. There was a BDO recommendation around cybersecurity in terms of town looking into that. So I just wanted to hear any feedback from IT or the CAO in terms of are we following up on that one?
Thank you. Is Mr. Rayner?
Thanks very much, Your Worship, members of council. It's a great question, Councillor Waters. So yes, we've actioned that item, and there will be a report back to the audit committee from IT. And as you know, we have an IT master plan and are implementing those components related to cyber risk mitigation. And happy to share with council that same memo when it comes out for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Item C1, the consolidated financial statement. So as the Deputy Mayor so indicated, these went through with a fine-tooth comb by the audit committee, but happy to answer any questions. I'm going to ask one thing, if I could, on this item, and how would we propose to make this report available to the public? Is this something we could post on our website? CFO or Treasurer Webb or CFO Melanishin, whoever wants to answer.
Yes, Mayor Dolan, we do publish or I guess post our financial statements on the website. So this information is reported annually on our website.
Great, and I appreciate that, especially with the schedule that, you know, has the graphs, because I think that makes it so easy to understand and read. Thank you for that. Item C2, the Innisfil Heights Official Plan Amendment. Councillor Sadi.
I don't want to pull it, Your Worship, just to clarification for anyone from the public, especially those in the interim control bylaw area. This report references in the executive summary a clarification on the wording that says final amendment to the official plan, and just letting the public know that this only applies to the Innisfil Heights amendment as the official plan number 2. And official plan amendments will continue with housekeeping cleanup on any further matters. So I just want to let the public know that if they see that, they're not frightened that, oh, what happened to the rest?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, this is about our employment area out by the 400. And it really is a good news story. It's the end of a stalemate that's been going on since about 2006 and ended in our favor, I might add, and brings our employment land out in that area to a size that makes it more desirable as far as a business plan is concerned. I will just comment on one thing that I've had some people ask me about, and that is that it's called a Innisfil Heights Strategic Settlement employment area, and that has people thinking that somehow there's residential involved in this, where in fact it isn't. I'm in fact wishing the province hadn't used the word settlement in the acronym. It would have made it a little bit more understandable, but the actual what is allowed in that area as far as very limited retail and just employment opportunity is indeed still stands. It's just that the area was enlarged. So good news story for us, and a long fought battle ended with this motion. Seeing no other comments, we'll go to C3, which is the sewage pump station number 2 development charge credit agreement. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have several questions on this, so I'd like to pull it.
Okay. Thank you. That's referred to committee. C4, the Killarney Beach Road urbanization, 20th Side Road to Ewart Street. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to pull it, but I just a comment that I'm very happy to see this happening over the next few years. As you know, we have flooding problems down there, and hopefully, and sidewalk problems, which have come to the, the school zone safety committee quite often. We've done some remedial work there, but it's, not what we're looking for. So I'm very happy to see this starting. And hopefully this will alleviate a lot of the problems once they do start on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel. Item C5, the staff report regarding the electronic signatures policy.
Your Worship, I had my hand up regarding C4, please.
Oh, I apologize, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to bring a point up that when I read the report, I didn't see anything about bicycle lanes, and listening to Councillor Van Berkel with the schools down there, and knowing that in our master plan, when we do road construction and that bike lanes are to be considered, I know some roads are county, some roads are ours, but I didn't see any mention in there bike lanes along that particular road. And I think as we grow, that particular road is going to get busy. And with the schools, I'm just concerned.
So why don't we refer that one as well, if you want to, Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. C5, electronic signatures policy. Seeing none. C6, the Innisfil Transit Essential Trips Assistance Program Extension. Under D, staff reports for information, there was none received. And under E, bylaws. E1, the bylaw to declare surplus the property known as 3122 25th Side Road and transfer same to Habitat for Humanity. Seeing none. E2, the amend procedural bylaw to allow for electronic participation in meetings. Councillor Sadi.
I just have some questions in regards to this one. Do you want me to pull it?
Sure, let's pull
Thank
that
you.
one. Thank you, Councillor. I promise not to make you read the whole recommendation. Okay, item F, correspondence for action, none received. Item G, correspondence for information. We had 2 items, the in-service Board of Directors meeting minutes and the Simcoe County Council highlights. Seeing nothing, item 8, the consent list recommendation. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder to move that consent list for those 3 items that were pulled. Councillor Fowler and Deputy Mayor Davidson. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Nicol, did we miss one?
Your Worship, I was just checking to make sure, was it E1 or E2 that was referred?
It was E2.
E2.
My mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so all in favor of the recommendation? That is carried. So and now we need a resolution or a recommendation to move into committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That is carried. And our first item. Which was item C3, and that was Councillor Van Berkel. And do you have a seconder for the item, Councillor? I see Councillor Fowler's hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. This pump station, I you know, because it's going to be handling an awful lot down there in the 6th line. It's part of the Orbit plan and some of Sleeping Lion. So I'm want to make sure that this pump station is like state of the art, that it you know, that what's happened in the past isn't going to happen again, where by you know, backup, that this pump will be able to handle, you know, 50-year floods and 100-year floods, and you know, without any problem, so that this doesn't happen again. The other thing I would like to know is if, because I'd like to see what's happening, that when it goes out for tender, we'll be seeing the RFP, and when it does get bid on and it, you know, the tenders come in, whether or not we will see the different contractors that bid on it. I'm not asking to see the prices ahead of time or anything like that, but I would like to see the contractors that bid on it, so that we know as a council whether they have worked in town here before, whether they did a good job or a bad job. You know, we've run into several problems over the last little while where we had to redo things and go back for more money. So it's a great concern to me that this is going to be done right, and that council is involved in this, not only for this council, but for the future, because it is for the future. Those are my questions, and I hope that somebody can answer them.
Mr. Kane.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Berkel, I can certainly answer the first question. The pump station design, you know, as with any municipal infrastructure projects, we always look at best practice. So In Services, who will ultimately be the operator and owner of that station, they are taking the lead on that design to meet both the immediate short-term needs that we've seen most recently, and also those long-term needs, not only for Orbit, but also for many projects upstream. So yes, rest assured, that's been, you know, part of the reason that it's taken as long as it has, because you know, I don't want to say we're fussy, but we are particular with respect to the infrastructure that we are going to construct and going to run over the longer term, so that, you know, we don't run into those increased operating costs by cutting corners in the short term. So rest assured that, you know, that design is considered best practice and has resulted in and will result in a station that's adaptable for the future, not only for Orbit, but also those points of development upstream as well. In regards to the procurement piece, you know, the RFP process is obviously a public process. So that RFP document will be public. I understand that there is an RFP workshop coming up for council to explain the intricacies of that process, and to ensure that that process is transparent and again meets the needs of the town and in services as well.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
No, I would also like to know whether or not we'll see, when the bids come in, which contractors bid on the pump station, so that, we as a collective council can look at these and see, if they've worked for us before, and whether in the past they have, or where they've worked in other municipalities, to see whether there were problems or not, rather than just take the lowest bidder.
So I saw Mr. Melanishin and Mr. Parkin, and did one of you want to talk about procurement and the new procurement laws?
Thank you, Worship. Maybe I'll just start, and if Mr. Melanishin would like to jump in. So with this specific project, because it's an in-services project, they're the ones who are controlling the procurement process. So the Board of In-Services would provide direction, and staff are undergoing that procurement right now. So council wouldn't see any bids or any submissions related to this specific project. Speaking to procurement generally, though, we have a very detailed procurement policy and a procurement purchasing bylaw that sets out the sort of methods that we procure items, and it provides for a number of methods where you have a tender which is based exclusively on price, but we see more and more nowadays that we evaluate not just based on price, but also a number of other criteria, their experience, whether we also track whether we've had positive experiences with contractors in the past. We have an evaluation process that we go through with contractors. So all of those are taken into consideration, and bids are scored based on the set criteria that is given to each bidder at the beginning of the process. So council wouldn't be involved in that specifically, but it's all set out in the policy that council does have the authority to approve and amend. Of course, we have to abide by purchasing laws and regulations that the province puts in place for us, and as well as trade treaties that are in place at the federal level as well.
Follow up, Your Worship.
Sure, go ahead, Councillor.
My question is, I know that Innis Services is doing this, but are they not doing it for the town of Innisfil? And are we, the council, not in, control of the town? I mean, if something goes wrong 20 years from now, and Innis Services is an arm or a branch from the town of Innisfil. So do we not have the right to know what's going on? I'm sorry. Who's bidding on and who isn't bidding on it. I'm not asking to see prices. That's fine. You can, I just want to see the list of bidders. And I think as in services, it doesn't matter who the contractor is. They're building it for the town of Innisfil, not for in services. They're building it for the town of Innisfil. So I would really like to see, if there's like 10 bidders on it, I'd like to see the names of the contractors that bid on it. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Melanishin?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Berkel. Yes, I appreciate where you're coming from, Councillor. And I wear a hat in both the town as CFO for the town and for in-services. So we would like to be very transparent as we move forward on this procurement process, and we will definitely engage council as we progress through this process. And very happy and to have that conversation with you. And we can take it offline once we have more information.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to point out that that there has been a number of changes in procurement policy and law since there's been some issues. I can think of one particularly in Vaughan and another one in Toronto. And there's been some not particularly positive events happen, which made the province change procurement policy. There were staff and members of council in different municipalities that were, for lack of a better word, bribed or coerced into voting in one way or another. So the province became, they changed the laws quite a lot. And that's why I've asked that we as a council have that procurement policy kind of 101 workshop so we can understand, because I'm with Councillor Van Berkel. I was around in the day when you sat in the council chambers and you watched everybody rip open the envelopes, and all of the excuse me, contractors were there, the bidders were there, council was there, but things have changed a bit since then. So I just want to make sure that we follow every letter of the law, as particularly in this very sensitive area when it comes to procurement, and that we do everything according to the standards that are set out for today. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did send some questions to Mr. Parkin earlier today, my concerns regarding this pumping station. And I understand Councillor Van Berkel's concern, because as council, we are responsible. I think we signed a document at the beginning of our term that we're responsible for water. And this does tie in with water and wastewater. I think the document holds us till the end of our days. So I think it's imperative that In-Services keeps council in the loop on this one. Also, due to the previous issues we've had and the accusations against Sleeping Lion that it was their fault, whatever, I want to make sure that In-Services reaches out to the development industry as a whole, keeps them in the loop totally to a whole. So if they see something from their experience that with their years and decades of experience can say, hey, this could be a problem down the road. This could be a design flaw that we've seen in other developments. So it's something new maybe for In-Services to work with the people, the development industry that's actually paying whatever percent they're paying. So I just want to see if In-Services is going to do their job. Let's work with the community. I think it's imperative they get moving on this right away, because I think it generates a huge construction start in the town in the next year, which we need. And of course, we get the levies from that as well. So that helps our budget process. So I think with Councillor Van Berkel's concerns, let's make sure we work with the development industry to do it right, do it on budget and fast, and no mistakes like we've had before. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor of the recommendation as printed? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next was the Clarny Beach Road Urbanization Project, and Deputy Mayor Davidson, do you have a seconder?
Can I get a seconder? Yes, I have.
Councillor Van Berkel.
Yeah, my concern here is just that I know in our master plan for our traffic roads master plan, we speak about any road upgrades or new roads that we would have bike lanes. Knowing that this area is a huge growth area over the next few years or decades, I'm wondering, and I know it's an extra cost, and I understand the shoulders being turned into bike lanes is a hell of a cost, but because there's schools involved and it is going to be a residential neighborhood as it grows, and with the orb just down the road, I really would like to see some consideration given to bike lanes on this particular area.
Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. The bike lane right now goes right to Ewart Street. And there's a bike lane actually off of the 20th Site Road that meets the 4th line. So it's that little piece in between. And I would almost think that they would put a bike lane in that, you know, when they do the actual design of the road, which hasn't been done yet, I don't think, that they would look at that aspect of it, because they are looking at sidewalks, curb and gutter and whatever, you know. So I would almost think that when they do the design that they would, you know, incorporate some sort of a bike lane in there.
Capital Engineering is here with us tonight. Ms. Jenkins, do you have an answer to that?
Through your worship, thank you for the questions regarding the bike lanes, Councillor Van Berkel and Deputy Mayor Davidson. We are planning to look at cycling through that area as part of the design. At this point, we're not sure if it will be dedicated cycling lanes or sharrows or something of that nature. But when we start the design, we'll definitely look at providing those connections through this area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we know at this time, Ms. Jenkins, if property acquisition is required, or is this something that we're hoping to work on within our current road allowance?
Through your worship, at this point, we are hoping to keep everything within the existing right-of-way as much as possible. Part of the initial part of the project will be to complete the environmental assessment, where we will look at some of those factors. But that being said, we're not planning to, widen the right of way at this point unless it's absolutely necessary. So we're planning to try and keep everything within the existing right of way as much as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Sadi.
Not questions, Your Worship, just a comment that in consideration of the bike lanes, when you're ready to do that, if engineering could take a look at some of the feedback on the pilot ones that have happened, especially in Alcona, and use that maybe as guidelines of what needs to be tweaked and changed, what's working and what's not. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the recommendation as printed. Those opposed? That is carried. Next is item E2, which is the electronic participation in meetings. Councillor Orsatti, did you have an amendment or a seconder?
I just want to discuss, I have Councillor Fowler has his hand up ready to go. Thank you very much. I just wanted to discuss this one with the, I know the provincial changes and allowing the electronic participation, but I just wanted to ask some clarification questions and also some comments about weighing the benefits of convenience needs versus need requirements. I know this is during critical circumstances, so maybe Your Worship, you could start with that from, I guess that would be from guidelines from the Simcoe District Health Unit as critical requirements. So would this just sort of go once they say that we're out of the phase 3 and we're relaxing, does this change? And when will this change? I'll start with that first question. Thank you.
CAO Rayner.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Sadi. That's correct. So it's actually on July 20th that Dr. Gardner wrote to the municipalities, and subsequent to that confirmed that council meetings, his recommendation is that council meetings continue to be electronic for the foreseeable future. He didn't put a specific date on when that might end, but given the considerable increase in cases we're seeing across our area as well as the province in the country, as schools return, I suspect that advice will continue to be the case. And there's a couple of components to it. The first is that the risk of having all of council and all of your senior team be quarantined or self-isolated is real. We saw this happen in British Columbia in a municipality. And so if I was going to say a real emergency, it's not awful. If another type of emergency, like a Godrich, kind of disaster happened, you can't afford to have your senior team and all of council down or be required to be self-isolated. So although I know you don't like hearing this, the truth is you're important people and you need to make sure that you're not taking unnecessary risks. So if it is possible to continue to meet effectively and engage with the community in this way, SMDHU, our health unit's advice is that you continue to do that. So the Emergency Operations Center and the Emergency Control Group continues to review those guidelines and has at this time recommended that council continue to meet electronically at this time, even though I think we're quite privileged that our chamber is probably one of the better ones in terms of physical distancing. The risk of trying to do a hybrid meeting or having some people in chamber is that with the 50-person cap per room that's still in place around facilities, you would be turning away that 51st person who might want to attend the council meeting or have an interest. And unfortunately, I'm sort of loath to admit it, but we haven't been able to quite master the hybrid meeting yet, where you've got some people together and some people online. The best recommendation from our IT teams is still to do this, which is even if you were in the same building, and in fact, we experience this sometimes with our staff, we're across from each other in office buildings or offices, but we continue to meet through Zoom like this so that it's the most effective in terms of being able to connect with people. The audio and the visual just isn't great. And if you were familiar, you recall what our chamber looks like in terms of the camera. It's okay, but it's not great. It's not the same quality. So we continue to work hard on that. We know that the future will likely involve the need for hybrid meetings. And when we look to companies, in the private sector that have global offices, they've been working on this a lot longer than we have. And there is technology. We just have to look at it and invest and find affordable ways of doing it. But so I would suspect that certainly for the next several months, this will be the recommended approach. And it mitigates the risk for you, but it also mitigates the risk for those staff members who do need to be in the office, our facility monitors, our customer service team, others that have to be present in order to do their job effectively. By us staying away, we're reducing the amount of risk that there's a community transmission that occurs. So we'll continue to monitor it, but we've been leaders in following the best practices from the health unit at this time, and really appreciate council's continued support of that. It's not ideal, we know that, but certainly for the foreseeable future, it's our recommendation.
Councillor Sadie?
Yes, I have a couple other just comments and questions, Mr. Rayner. So I find that the one for it certainly may be convenient for the council meetings and that, but the one thing that I find more difficult is special closed meetings. Typically we would go to the town, we'd pick up our closed package, we'd have time to read that and prepare and digest the information. With the virtual one, we're not getting that, so we zoom in and we're trying to read, digest, and make decisions. So I just wanted to give that, I find that difficult, to make sure that we're understanding it all. So just sharing that information. And also, I'm just wondering about the request from the public for committees, for participation from the public to register once, to be able to link into all the meetings, and how staff would be able to handle that. And so for example, someone wants to link in once, register once to hit all the library board meetings or all the park committee meetings, and every single traffic safety committee. So is that something that legal would have to be involved in IT as to setting that up, or even whether it's feasible, and whether they would be required to do that each time? Just on that. And lastly, impact to staff.
Mr. Rayner?
Thank you, through your worship. So we'll take that point about getting information for closed session more in advance. We know that that's not a COVID issue. That's an issue around the pace at which our municipality moves. And it's not a new criticism, but we take it and we understand it. And thank you for the reminder, Councillor, and we'll continue to work hard to try to get you that information in advance as much as possible. It's a great suggestion around the committees. How can we make it more seamless and more efficient and more convenient for people who want to participate in committees? They don't work this way, you know, in the same structure as the council meetings. So in terms of live streaming, but we are exploring that technology and finding ways and exploring it now internally. So we'll take that information back, and we appreciate those comments. And if other council members have ideas about how they'd like to see that work, please share those with Patty and the clerk's team, and we'll work on that. And then in terms of staff, sorry, Councillor, was your question, how is the remote work working for staff? Yeah, so we've actually just completed a survey of our team, and I apologize in advance to those that are working on this project. I don't want to steal their thunder, but overwhelming support from staff that can work remotely are finding it fairly effective. It doesn't work for everybody, so it isn't a one-size-fits-all for sure. But we've been able to manage flexibly, you know, those circumstances where there is a challenge. But overwhelmingly, like I think it's over 80% of people who are working remotely are saying that they're as productive and are able to work effectively from a remote location, which is great. We're going to be bringing back some policy work to you to support those efforts as we continue to have staff working remotely, at least for the foreseeable future until the end of the year. But there are some efficiencies to be gained, as you know, we're seeing in the private sector. You know, office space is expensive, even in Innisfil, and so how can we manage this moving into the future? So we have some suggestions, and look forward to sharing that report with you in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Other questions or comments? I sit on the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, and since the beginning of this pandemic, definitely have always said that the best we would make the decisions based on the best medical advice and try to keep the politics out of it. And I think we've been fairly successful in doing that. And currently, Dr. Gartner is still saying that his best advice is for us to meet in this way. I appreciate that the province of Ontario has given us this opportunity, and I think, well, long overdue for some municipalities, the remote north, when it could be a 2-hour drive to a council meeting. I think it could help in future elections get more diverse people to run for elections. If I broke my leg or broke my hip, that I would be able to participate, as well as it could be, a young new mom who joined council who could participate. So I'm hopeful that in the future it will kind of widen the opportunity for people to sit. My last comment was, you heard about, I've told you about before about the council, and so did CEO Rayner, about the council in BC, that all of council and all of staff are under quarantine. I'll tell you that yesterday, 5 Quebec, well, they're called MNAs, but 5 Quebec MPPs, including 3 cabinet ministers, were put under isolation yesterday after the mayor of Longueuil, Sylvie Parent, was tested positive COVID. So now 3 of the mayors of the largest cities in the province, including the mayor of Montreal, are now all under self-quarantine. And, then you think that's what made the newspaper, but then on top of that, it's all their families and it's all their staff, and possibly if Mayor Plante had been around her council, as I was around some of my council today, not all together, but Councillor Fowler and I were together today. So it has these repercussions that it doesn't take long to reverberate through the community. So while it might seem a little overcautious, I think with the numbers going where they are right now, we've had 2 new cases in the last 2 days in Innisfil. So I think that better safe than sorry. And I know it is difficult. I miss seeing all of you. I don't miss the drive home after the meeting, but I think we're best to just play it by ear and stay as safe as we can and responsible and show our community, who some of them I think are being a little bit too blasé about it, and who are it shows, I think our community sets a good example of proper procedure. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the bylaw 07720? Any opposed? That's carried. Next is a recommendation to adopt the recommendations of committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Waters. All those in favor? Any contrary? That is carried. Next, we have the consideration of the adoption of the recommendations from committee. Did we not just do that? I'm lost now. Help me, Madam Clerk or Madam Assistant Clerk.
Madam Chair, you just adopted the committee rise and return to council session. So that's the one that you just adopted. And now you're going to adopt the recommendations of council.
Thank you, Ms. Creamer, for keeping me on track. So that is moved by Councillor Ices and seconded by Councillor Payne. All those in favor? That is carried. Next is notice of motions. There's none being given at this time. And item 11 is announcements. So I rarely do this, but I'm going to take the floor first, just so nobody steals my thunder. And I want to take the opportunity to thank both Councillor Arsati and her husband for hosting a yard sale. I know that Councillor Arsati, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, has been planning for months a wonderful trip with her husband for their 45th wedding anniversary to go to Paris, which of course got all canceled. And so what does she do? She gives her time to the community and donates money, both $800 to both the food bank, Innisfil Food Bank, and also to the Gildas Club. And thank you so much. I know how much hard work yard sales are, and thank you so much for giving your time and all of your resources to the community.
Yeah, well, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, you know, really, it's the community, and we. The executive director of Gildas Club South Simcoe, Muskoka, attended on Saturday, set up a table. We were so good that people, and first, thank you to council for the bylaw to allow yard sales. So it was perfect timing. And we set up a table with hand sanitizer, asked everybody to use that as they entered the driveway. People wore masks. It was very well behaved, well spaced, and it really was with the assistance of council. Many members of council shared on their feeds about it, and we decided to pay it forward, and as you mentioned, give all the proceeds to both the Innisfil Food Bank and Gildas Club in support of cancer. And it was very well attended. We actually raised $1,455.50. My husband and I rounded it up so that each organization got $800 each. And we were supposed to be in our dream trip in Paris in a hotel. So we did have a little Eiffel Tower and a glass of champagne on Sunday night as we crashed, but it was all good. And I think it just shows, you know, you can do little things that give it back to the community. And it felt so good to volunteer. And I want to thank the rest of council for helping me share the information, because it was it resulted in a payback to our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sadi. Other announcements? Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. Similar story. Obviously, COVID has greatly impacted so many residents and businesses and groups. And although I stepped away a few years ago, I had overseen the Guildford Hall and know the difficulties they've had generating enough rentals and fundraising to keep the doors open. With the rentals, 0 rentals this year, and Jake Stock, the big music festival that we started a few years ago, being canceled, they're in a desperate time right now. They're looking for any sort of donations whatsoever, including even empties. I know myself, and I believe the mayor actually did drop off some empties on the weekend, and they've raised about $600 towards the hall at this point. I think just for the general community, anybody can help out a little bit. They can e-transfer, they can do whatever else, drop some empties off just to help keep that great hall going again. It's since 1873, it's been going, and about every 8 to 10 years, the board gets worn down, and then we get some fresh people in to take it over and run again. So I hope that this time we have some people that can step up and help again. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicol. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe coming up, not this week, but the following week, is Open Doors Innisfil. And it originally was supposed to be something that people actually visited, but it's going to be virtual this year. So I don't know if I have the date of Saturday, September 19th. So if there are any staff that can correct me on that, I just thought I'd put a word out there just to make sure that everyone gets a chance to see that.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I don't see any anybody turning on their video, but we'll make sure we do send an email out and keep everyone in the loop if we get that information. Anybody else? Councillor Orsatti.
Sorry, and I was remiss in thanking Councillor Payne for coming out and helping to staff the tables for 2 days, the day before her anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Councillor Payne. Other announcements from members of council? I just had a couple of quick things. First of all, tomorrow evening, I'm really looking forward to hosting a virtual author talk. I've finished reading Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabishkig, I'm sure I've got his name wrong, Rice. And I'm going to have the opportunity to have a virtual author talk with him tomorrow before the Simcoe Reads competition. And on September 16th, next Wednesday, between 1 and 4, Council will be having another virtual meeting. We'll be having a strategic planning session because of COVID. We've done our community needs assessment and have some suggestions on where we might need to pivot in order to make sure that our committee is well taken care of, our community is well taken care of, both during and post-COVID, and looking forward to having that. And if members wish to join, it'll be both video and audio recorded, so you can watch live stream if you like. So seeing no other, Mr. Rayner, did you have something for the good of the town?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Just wanted to take the opportunity very quickly to recognize that our very own Mayor Dolan was named one of the 2020 Women of Influence in Local Government Award by Municipal World. We're very proud of you, Your Worship. This is an award, of course, that celebrates women who have made significant contributions to the field, whether on the administrative or political side of life. And these women, and there's only a few of them, have worked tirelessly to make things happen in the interest of strong local government, but also supported so many others along the way. And we're just very proud of you, Your Worship, and all the work do here. And
thank you, Mr. Rayner. It was a huge honor, and I just got you my trophy so you can see it. It's just lovely, and I'm just thrilled to when I looked at the caliber of some of the women that had received it before me, it just made it all the more special. So thank you very much for those comments. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for the thumbs up. Seeing none. Wow, 8:30. This is good. We haven't done this in a while. We're usually asking for an extension to the hour. So a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw, please. Councillor Asadi and Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That is carried. And now for adjournment. We have Councillor Nicol and Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. I wish you all a good evening and stay safe, everyone, and we'll meet again soon. So strategic planning next Wednesday, and then the Wednesday after that is our regular council meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Oh, thank you. I was remiss in not thanking staff. So please, staff who wish to turn your video on, and thank you. One of the things that happens in these meetings is you're all sitting behind a blank screen, and there's many of you who are sticking around all night waiting for a question and never get one. So just want all of Innisfil to know all of the support that our council has behind us. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thanks, staff.
Good night.